Hi everyone, it's Lindy on here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today I thought I'd show you how to make this fun, festive 3D embossed holiday card. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to use the 3D Textured Impressions embossing folder. It's called Fa La La, and this is by Courtney Chilson, and you can see all the beautiful detail on this. We're going to run it through with the Kraft-stock Tim Holtz metallic cardstock, and we're going to use the gold and the silver here. So I'm going to take my tonic Tim Holtz trimmer and I'm going to cut these two pieces of metallic paper down to 4 inches by about 5 1/4. And I'm going to cut the gold and the silver the exact same size. Now I'm going to go ahead and run those through my 3D embossing folder, and I just want to make sure that it's centered on the folder. I want to get the Fa La La centered on this metallic piece of paper. So I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I have that position. Now I'm going to have you use the instructions for your specific machine to run a 3D embossing folder through, because for each machine it's a little bit different. So once you have that done, you can see how beautiful that is, especially on the metallic paper. So I'm going to take my Coordination Sand It gadget, and this is just a little sanding block, and I'm going to sand off the tops, the high points of the embossed area here. And that will remove some of the metallic color, and underneath is that Kraft cardstock. So that's what's nice about the Tim Holtz metallic paper, is the underneath, or the core, is a metallic cardstock. I'm going to take my Nuvo surface sweep brush, and just clean off all of that sanded area. Now I'm going to come in with my aged Mahogany Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to use that applicator tool and just rub that all over this panel. Now you'll see that it's going to darken those areas where the paper shows through. It's also going to get that ink on all the metallic areas as well. But you're going to need to brush that away. I take a clean paper towel and just buff that off. It will not dry on the metallic surface, so you need to get rid of that. Otherwise it'll just come off on your fingers. So the only place it's going to stick is where we sanded it, the sanded areas. So once you have that completely buffed off, we're going to go ahead and take the letters from the gold panel, and I'm going to cut them out, each one of those out individually, and this does not take a lot of time. I'm not going to cut the little centers out of each of these letters. I'm going to leave those as is. So I'm just cutting around the basic letter, and you can see I left that center in there because you could cut it away if you want to. I decided I didn't, and I'm keeping these extra pieces for another project. So I'm going to go ahead and take my multi-medium matte from Ranger, and this is a really strong adhesive, and it's going to have no problem attaching the paper and the metal together. And I just decided to kind of brush that glue down a little bit with my fingers so that it won't kind of come out the sides there. And I'm just going to press that into place and then put a block on top of that to let it dry. So I went ahead and I attached all of these letters. Now if you get any glue on the letters, because it is metallic, just take a wet baby wipe and just wipe that away. So now I'm going to cut this piece of paper 4 1/4 by 11 inches to create my card, and then I'm going to score it at 5 1/2 inches. So it'll be an A2 size card, but it'll be a top folding card. So it'll be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm just pressing out the crease here with the bone folder. And now I want to put some ink all around the edges of that. And I'm going to use the Victorian Velvet Distress Oxide. And I'm just going to go all the way around the edges. And you can see there, I don't need to go in very far. I'm just checking. I just want a little bit of a border to show when I layer that on. So I'm going to go ahead and do all the way around there. And now I'm going to grab some adhesive, the score tape, the 1/4 inch score tape, and I'm going to place that all the way around the edges. And I want to get up to the edge as close as I can here and make sure that I have enough adhesive so that that doesn't pull up at all. Because with that 3D, you really need to press those edges down. So I'm just making sure I have an even border all the way around, and I'm going to position that in place. So now I'm going to grab the Sizzix Thinlits, Tim Holtz, and I'm going to grab the poinsettia and a few of those greeneries, the berries, and that bow. And this is from the Funky Festive collection. I love all these funky flowers. There's a few different designs. I'm going to grab the Bristol Smooth Strathmore 100-pound cardstock. It's a pure white cardstock. And then I'm going to grab those designs that we decided to use. This is the poinsettia, and I love that all the pieces are included in the die. This is another one of the greenery and the fern, the berries, and then the little bow. And I'm just cutting these down just so I can run them through my Tim Holtz Sizzix Sidekick machine. I'm going to go ahead and run each of these through. And now I have everything cut, but you can see this one with the little berries. I'm not going to use those berries that go on top. We're going to apply some Nuvo drops later to those. So I'm taking the ground espresso, and I'm just going to apply a little bit of that ink just right up the stem of that. Now, if you get it on other areas, don't worry about it. I kind of like how that looks. It's going to give it a little bit of a vintagey look. So then I'm going to grab the peeled paint, and I'm going to apply that to all the little berry portions. And the only reason I'm doing this is just so that if they show, I am going to be putting the Nuvo drops on there, but if anything shows, it will be green and not just pure white. So now that those are all set, I'm going to set those aside and let those dry. Then I'm going to come in and grab this other fern here. I'm going back to the ground espresso, and I'm going to ink up the stem. And I'm going to do both of those. And then I'm going to take the fern part and do the peeled paint again. And be careful when you're doing these. You kind of want to dab it on. You don't want to tear these. They are kind of delicate. So just sort of in a dabbing kind of motion. And then I'm going to grab the forest moss, which is a little bit darker, and just add a few little areas of that, just kind of randomly here and there. I am going to heat set these because I want to glue that stem on. So I'm going to grab the Nuvo Deluxe adhesive and just apply a little bit of that on the back of each of these stems. And like I say, you do want to dry these off just so that everything will stick together. If it gets too wet, you have a hard time getting the adhesive to stick. So I'm just going to glue those together. And I love this. This is my favorite little fern. I just think it's so cute. Now I'm going to grab this one here, and I'm going to use the more of a blue-green color. So I'm grabbing the Evergreen Bough. And again, with kind of a dabbing motion, I'm going to apply that all over this. And then with the pine needles, which is a little bit darker shade, I'm just going to, again, randomly place that on some of the little branches here. And you can see how that gives it a little bit more depth. Now, with the bow, I did end up die cutting one out of the white and one out of the metallic gold. I did decide I wanted the bow to be gold. So I'm layering these two together just to give it a little bit more substance. Now you could layer more of these together than just the one, but I thought that was enough, just so it won't, fold or bend. It'll stay nice and solid. And then I'm going to take and attach that little tiny dot to the center of the bow here. You definitely need some tweezers for this. And you can see how pretty that is. I'm going to let that set and dry. So now I'm going to grab the other pieces from the poinsettia, and I'm going to take the Victorian velvet, and I'm going to apply that ink all over each of these little pieces here. Not being fussy, just kind of applying it randomly here. Just get a good coating of it. So now that we have all of those done, and I'm just showing you that's the little center. We'll color that separately later. I'm going to grab the aged mahogany for now and just add a little bit of shadowing to some of these pieces of the flower here. And just kind of random, I'm doing the tips on all the rest of these. It just brings it a little bit more to life, I think, when you add a little bit of two or three different shades to these. And then I'm going back to the Victorian velvet, and I'm just going to blend those together a little bit. So those look good. Now for that little center, I'm just going to grab that's right there on the die. I'm not going to use the little dots that go inside that center, but I am going to ink this up with the peeled paint. I really didn't even need this piece, but I wasn't sure, so I did ink it up, because I'll show you what we're going to do with the center in a second here. So I'm grabbing my Sizzix sculpting mat and the sculpting tools that come with it, and I'm using this pointed one here that has a little bit of a curved tip. And I'm going to go ahead and add some of the veins to each of these little petals. And I know I said this in a previous video, but there's something about the metal that seems to react with that oxide ink, and it creates a dark line in these, which is kind of nice because it actually looks like you kind of drew it on with a pen. So it kind of does two things at once, creates that embossed vein and then also adds that little bit of darkness to it. Then I just grab the ball tool there and just press down in the center to make it pop up a little bit. Here I'm going to just add those veins. It's a little trickier here because you don't have a full petal, but just apply it where you do see the petal portion. And the rest isn't going to show anyway, so we're just applying it down towards the tips of these little petals. And I did that all the way around. Now I'm going to take that larger ball tool and just press the center of that one as well. I'm going to do the same thing here. Now these get kind of tiny. I'm just going to go all the way around and add that center vein. And then I'm going to go ahead and just add those little veins to the side all the way around. Then I'm going to take that smaller ball tool and just press that down in the center. And here again, I'm going to do the same exact thing. Now you could skip all of this if you wanted to. If you don't want to do all these little detailed veins, just use the ball tool and just press in the center of each of these and pop them up a little bit just to get a little dimension. So now I'm going to grab that multi-medium mat again, and I'm going to glue these little pieces together. Just using that tool to press it down and sculpt it a little bit more. Just one little dot of adhesive for each of these is going to be fine because we do want the petals to stay popped up. And you can see how cute that comes together. It's very simple. Now I'm going to take that little green piece and I'm just sculpting it a little bit by pressing down in the center of it to create kind of like a little cup. And then I'm adding the glue again and I'm going to press that into place. And you can see all the dimension on that. Now what I'm going to do is take some glitter glass. This is the gold. I will try to give you the vendor for the glitter glass, because I do list all the supplies at the bottom. And this is my little Nouveau spoon tool. I just got this and I think it's kind of fun. It's just like a little tiny mini spoon, and it's great for doing like sequins and this glitter or glass beads. It really helps to kind of get into a small area with this. I'm just throwing it right on top of that glue, and then I'm just pressing down slightly, very lightly with that ball tool just to kind of get it into place. And I'm going to let that dry. So now I'm just kind of taking that tool and just pressing down a little bit in the centers of each of those little berries. And now I'm going to grab the Nouveau Vintage Drops. And this is the Dusty Rose color. I don't know if you can see that there, but it's called Dusty Rose, and it's this beautiful vintage rose color. And I'm going to put a dot of that in the center of each of those berries. So that's why I got rid of the paper berry center that came with the die, because I wanted to add this instead. I think this just adds so much more dimension and kind of goes along with what we did with the embossing folder. So you can see how beautiful that is. Now you do need to let these sit and dry for a little while here. But of course I touched them and ruined one set and had to redo them. I don't know if you guys are like me, but I'm constantly touching things that are wet. So anyway, just with these little ferns here, you can go ahead and sculpt them with your fingers, or you can grab the little tools and just press down in certain areas and get them to pop up a little bit. And again, that's just to bring these to life a little bit, just to add a little dimension. And now we're going to go ahead and we can start to, oh, I did want to show you that, as I mentioned before, I wanted to bring those Nouveau vintage drops into the embossing folder. So I decided to kind of follow the lines of some of the berries on the folder itself. And I'm just kind of adding those vintage drops all around in some random areas as well as where those berries are. And I thought it added a nice touch and just brought that color in. And then of course we have it on the berries in our little floral arrangement as well. So now I'm going to grab the Sizzix Framelits with stamps. This is also by Courtney Chilson. I just love the things that she does. And this is a beautiful little set of stamps and matching dies. And we're going to grab the Christmas Doodles. This set is called the Christmas Doodles. And we're going to grab the Merry Christmas from this, which has the underlay and then the detailed Merry Christmas as well. So this is the underlay portion here. And I did decide to not do this in the white, but rather do it in the metallic gold. So I'm going to go ahead and run that through. So that's going to give me a beautiful metallic gold Merry Christmas. But for right now, I want to color that bottom panel. So I'm going to take that Victorian velvet again, and I'm going to go all over this bottom piece here. Just blending it out. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab the aged mahogany again. And I'm just going to go around the edges. This is just going to give me a little bit more depth and add a little bit more interest to this piece here. And you can see how that looks. So I am going to go ahead and heat set this, because as I said before, if you're going to glue something on top of these that you've put a lot of ink on, sometimes they won't stick if it's too wet. So I'm grabbing that Nuvo adhesive again. I'm just going to put some little dots of adhesive all around there. And then I'm going to attach it to this panel, and you can see how beautiful that is going to look. And that's for the inside of our card. So now I'm going to go ahead and start attaching these little pieces of the floral arrangement here. And I'm going to go ahead and just use that same Ranger Multi-Medium glue. And I am making it somewhat symmetrical. Usually I would recommend not doing that, but in this particular case I really liked it. I kind of made the top and I wanted to make it look like a spray. So I'm doing basically the same thing on both sides here. Now I'm going to attach these little berries, which again I think just adds so much to the card. And then I'm just going to place the poinsettia right in the center of all that. And you want a nice little dollop of glue there just to make sure that it really sets in place. So I let this dry overnight and I came back to it the next day. And you can see how beautiful that looks. And now I wanted to let those Nuvo drops dry because again I had touched them too many times and was really starting to make a mess. So I let everything dry and now I'm just going to attach that bow. And I love how that little bow looks. It just adds a little more sparkle there, brings that gold in. And now I'm going to go ahead and attach my saying to the inside of the card. And I'm just going to center it on this panel here. And you could see the finished card with all the dimension and the beautiful colors. I love this Victorian velvet. I just think it's so pretty. And the Victorian looking vintage drops match that Victorian velvet almost exactly. So it's a beautiful combination. And there is the beautiful Merry Christmas inside. So I decided to show you a simpler version of this same card. I used white cardstock, the Elizabeth Craft soft finish cardstock. I rubbed Victorian velvet all over the top high points of that embossing folder. It's the same die set that we used before, but I used the holly and berries, and it cuts out two pieces. You get the bottom layer and the top. And I colored the bottom layer with the Victorian velvet and the aged mahogany just like we did before. And I colored the ivy with the two shades of Evergreen Bough and the pine needles. And then I used the Victorian drops in the center again. And you'll see that I just glued down the center so that the edges would pop up a little bit. So you get that same dimension, but it's a quicker, simpler card. And inside, I just used the center part of the ivy and colored in those berries. And you can see that that would make if you have to make a lot of holiday cards, this might be the way to go. I ran my envelope through the embossing folder. I just folded it over and just ran it through. And that gave me that beautiful little embossed edge. So there's the card that we originally did. I hope you had fun today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. And don't forget to visit me at my website, pinkwhisperdesigns.com. Thanks so much and have a great day. Bye-bye.